Structures of globalization will now move into the global interstate system. Global interstate system will be dealing with nation, states, and nation-state. So first natin, we'll have the definition for nation and states. Or we will differentiate kung ano ba yung state at ano yung nation. State is defined by Max Weber, a German social theorist, as a compulsory political organization with a centralized government that maintains a monopoly of the legitimate use of force within a certain territory. While Hadley Bull, a 20th century international philosopher, stated that states are independent political communities, each of which possesses a government that and asserts sovereignty in relation to a particular portion of the Earth's surface and a particular segment of the human population. So taking that as our definition, we will have the definition for states as a political organization or a political union wherein there is government, sovereignty, as well as territory. So that means na hindi natin matatawag na state ang isang lugar kung wala itong government, kung wala itong pinamumunuan, or wala itong population, and at the same time, or wala itong geographical location. Nation naman, on the other hand, is an imagined political community and imagined as both inherently limited and sovereign. It is imagined because the members of even the smallest nation will never know most of their fellow members, meet them, or even hear of them. Yet in the minds of each lives the image of their communion. Therefore, when we say nation, ito naman yung walang geographical location. Kasi, nation can be imagined dahil it is limited because even the largest of them, encompassing perhaps a billion beings, has finite, if elastic, boundaries beyond which lie other nations. It is imagined as sovereign because the concept was born in an age in which enlightenment and revolution were destroying the legitimacy of the divinely ordained hierarchical dynastic realm, and at the same time, it is imagined as community because regardless of actual inequality and exploitation that may prevail in each, the nation is always conceived as a deep horizontal comradeship. We can say na ang nation ay imagined because it exists in cultures. So, kung pagkukumparahin natin ang nation and state, when we say state, ito ay may physical na location or ito ay isang political concept. While nation naman, it is an ethnic concept dahil ito ay naka-anchor dun sa common quality ng mga tao. Then, state is not subject for external control dahil meron silang sovereignty at merong government. Whereas nation naman may or may not be independent from external control since nation can exist even from different nationalities or it can extend its borders. See, state, it may consist of one or more nations or people, while si nation naman may be made of several states. Then, we have here nation-state. Yun nga, kapag sinabi nating state, it is a territory with its own institutions and population. Nation naman is a large group of people who inhabit a specific territory and are connected by history, culture, or another commonality. Therefore, a nation-state is a cultural group that is also state. Therefore, meron tong identity, commonality, at sovereignty katulad. We can say na kapag nation-state, it is a system of organization where people with a common identity live in a country with firm borders and a single government. For example, state ay Pilipinas. We can consider Philippines din naman as a nation kasi we do have Filipino nation na tinatawag. And in here, meron tayong sariling history, may culture tayo, and we have common grounds, which is language. At kahit pa madaming yung mga Pilipino ay nasa iba't ibang panig ng mundo, we can consider them as part of the Filipino nation. Then, yung concept ng nation-state ay meron sa kada isang nation. However, we cannot consider all nations as nation-state and we cannot consider all state as nation-state. Same thing na not all states are nations and not all nations are state. In example, the nation of Scotland has its own flag and national culture. Therefore, we can consider them having their own identity. But still, it belongs to a state called United Kingdom. Kaya hindi natin matatawag na nation-state si Scotland. About the state and economic interdependence. So the belief that globalization imposes a forced choice upon states either to conform to free market principles or run the risk of being left behind is turned into a phrase called the Golden Straitjacket by Thomas Friedman. He is a neoliberalism journalist and advocate. The Golden Straitjacket is used to illustrate the forcing of states into policies that suit the preferences of investment houses and corporate executives or the electronic herd, who swiftly move money and resources into countries favored as adaptable to the demands of international business and withdraw them even more rapidly from countries deemed uncompetitive. We have here the term golden straitjacket. Yan yung pag-require to impose the free market system. At kung saan nga sa free market system, will be having low tariffs or low trade barriers para sa mga commodities na ini-import at ini-export. Kaya ito yung pinopromote when it comes to the free market trade. And at the same time, yung action ng pag-force or pag-require sa kanila ay tinatawag na golden straitjacket. Bakit ba nila ini-enforce ang free market trade? Once again, ito po ay naka-anchor sa paniniwala na mas makakaahon tayo sa paghihirap or mare-resolve natin yung nangyaring financial crisis ng 2007 to 2008 through helping one another. And that is opening our borders or opening our economies to other countries. Or yung tinatawag natin na neoliberalism. Hindi po ba si neoliberalism ay nakabase sa Washington Consensus? And sa Washington Consensus, naka-indicate doon na yung kanyang mga advocates ay nagpo-push para magkaroon ng minimal spending ang government para maipababa na din yung pagkakautang. Nandun din yung privatization of government-controlled services, andun din yung reduction of tariff, at pag-open ng economy ng developing countries to developed country. Kasi they see na yun yung quickest way to progress. And through that, nagkakaroon ngayon ng access si developed country to the developing country. There are two things that will happen if a country is in golden straitjacket. The economy grows and politics shrinks. It is straitjacket because it narrows the political and economic policy choices of those in power to relatively tight parameters. Yung economical aspect ay nag-grow kasi we are being supported even the countries outside the country or even the regions na hindi naman natin kaalay through the international institutions, while politics shrinks kasi they will not have total access to the economic sovereignty ng Pilipinas or ng isang bansa. Thus, they will have limited access with regards to trading taxes, tariffs, and so on, as well as the pagset ng rules with regards to trading. In everyday political speech and media commentary, the terms nation and state are used interchangeably. The term nation-states has a dual concept, with the modern state going back to the Peace of Westphalia and nationalism, tracing back to Protestantism. The Enlightenment, the rise of the vernacular, with both concepts of nation and state fused in the French Revolution. Nation-states are territorial organizations characterized by the monopolization of legitimate violence, while nation-states are membership organizations with a collective identity and a democratic pretension to rule. So, nation-state is an organization where people with a common identity live inside the country with firm borders and a single government. Let's now talk about the neoliberalism and economic sovereignty. So neoliberalism is the intensification of the influence and dominance of capital. It is the elevation of capitalism as a mode of production into an ethnic, a set of political imperatives, and a cultural logic. It also holds that the social good will be maximized by maximizing the reach and frequency market transactions, and it seeks to bring all human actions into the domain of the market. Once again, ang neoliberalism na nakabase sa Washington Consensus, kung saan sa Washington Consensus, isa sa mga principles niya ay privatization of government-controlled services. And we know na kapag nagkaroon ng privatization of government-controlled services, ito ang tinatawag natin na capitalism. With that, ito yung sinasabi nilang means for us to have economic stability. However, nako-question ngayon ang economic sovereignty. When we say economic sovereignty, it is the power of national governments to make decisions independently of those made by other governments. There is a claim na once na we have anchored ourselves into the neoliberalism, magkakaroon din ng decrease sa economic sovereignty kasi magkakaroon din ng access yung ibang country through a third party or the international institutions na makialam sa kung anong nangyayari sa economy ng isang bansa. Hindi po ba kapag nag-implement tayo ng free market principles, andito din yung involvement ng economical international institutions. Therefore, we followed the rules and regulations set by those institutions kaya nalilimit yung ating economic sovereignty. It can have a positive and negative effects. Positive effects kasi magkakaroon tayo ng more ideas in terms of managing the economy. Negative effect kasi we can practice our sovereignty in terms of the economy. Kasi in the globalized world economy, governments have no alternative but to adopt to neoliberal economic policies of privatization, deregularization, and reductions in public expenditures. Therefore, naibibigay na natin implicitly yung ating economic sovereignty dun sa mga institutions na member tayo. Kung nakikita ng mga international organizations na makakaresolve ng financial crisis na experience natin ay free market trade, then we should adhere with it. There are 4 different concepts of sovereignty. This include international legal sovereignty, Westphalian sovereignty, interdependent sovereignty, domestic sovereignty. International legal sovereignty. It refers to the acceptance of a given state as a member of international community. Meron tayong set of international organizations at doon, we're being recognized as a state, as a member. Every time we participate in the global trade, every time we participate in different agreements. And through that, we'll be able to set rules and regulations regarding trading, regarding international relations. Westphalian sovereignty naman, it is based on the principle that one sovereign state should not interfere in the domestic arrangement of another. So there are 2 types of intervention na tinatawag, internal intervention at external intervention. Internal intervention yung tawag natin kapag within the region ang interference. Halimbawa si Region 4A, meron tayong economic issue and we want to resolve it on our own. However, nagkaroon ng intervention or nag-raise ng voice si Region 4B. That is internal intervention. Kasi we are still in the same country. We are still within the same state. We are still under the same nation. External intervention happens when an external force or external entity intervene with an internal issue. Isa sa mga examples external intervention ay yung intervention ni Russia sa issue ni Ukraine with Crimea. Kahit pa gusto ni Crimea na maging part ni Russia, wala pa ding right si Russia to intervene sa kagustuhang yon ni Crimea to be part of Russia. Still, si Ukraine lang ang dapat nakikialam sa issue na yon, or si Ukraine at Crimea lang ang dapat nag-discuss ng pag-uusap na yon. So in Westphalian sovereignty, they discourage na magkaroon ng intervention ng other sovereign state dun sa issue ng domestic arrangement. Interdependent sovereignty naman ay the capacity and willingness to control flows of people, goods, and capital into and out of the country. Interdependence in the sense na we can have the record, we can track kung ano yung in and outflow sa isang country, whether that is commodity or people. Interdependence kasi we depend on each other para matrack kung sino ang lumalabas at pumapasok sa isang bansa, and at the same time, kung anong mga commodity ang pumapasok sa ating bansa. Paano po mangyayari yon? Sa isang flight, meron tayong tinatawag na manuscript. Doon nakalista yung mga pangalan ng pasahero. Pag alis nyo dito ng Pilipinas, nakalista yung pangalan ninyo. Pagdating nyo doon sa bansa pupuntahan, ililista ulit ang pangalan nyo. Bakit po yung ginagawa? Para maiwasan natin ang illegal migration. Ganun din yun sa goods and services, para ma-regulate yung number of goods na pumapasok at lumalabas ng isang bansa. Kaya nga po meron tayong customs. Next ay domestic territory. So it is the capacity of a state to choose and implement policies within the territory. Domestic sovereignty, meaning we have the power over our territory. Tulad na nasabi ko kanina, na-question natin ang economic sovereignty ng individual members kasi global economic trends are influenced by economic sovereignty of an individual member. The increase of the number of international organizations and the expansion of their functions have undeniably restricted an individual country's sovereignty to a certain extent. Yes, we are implementing the free market trade. However, we are being limited on the principles that we are going to implement. At doon nila nakikita na ito ang implication ng free market trade. Hindi na natin kayang gumalaw sa sarili natin, or hindi tayo po pwedeng gumalaw na walang intervention ng third party, just like the international organizations. The most typical example ng economic intervention na to, ng kung saan nagkakaroon ng threat to economic sovereignty, ay ang involvement ng financial institutions like World Bank, IMF, and World Trade Organization in domestic economic affairs of their members. There is around 60,000 transnational corporations which developed rapidly in the latter half of the last century, and they are encroaching upon individual countries' sovereignty in the economic domain. The most typical example ng pagkakaroon ng extensive involvement ng financial institution sa isang local market or sa domestic sovereignty ay yung World Bank, yung IMF, as well as the WTO. So there are 60,000 or around 60,000 transnational corporations which developed rapidly in the latter half of the last century, and they are now sharing or encroaching upon individual countries' sovereignty in the economic domain or the economic sovereignty. So many underdeveloped nations resorted to foreign assistance and interventions resulted to the deprivation of government as regard control of their economy due to the disorderly domestic economic establishments. Due to this, some scholars predicted that the loss of their economic sovereignty under this form of neoliberalism can be considered as neo-colonialism. More importantly, some of the world's leading economic entities, such as the United States, the European Union, and Japan, are taking advantage of their predominant economic status. With that, it is affecting or infringing upon the economic sovereignty of other countries. Under these circumstances, there is an increased number of scholars who have concluded that the economic dominion of individual nations have come to an end. While countries are inevitably cede some control over economic sovereignty to external actors, there is still a structural power of sovereign states which dictates the terms and tenets of globalization. At yun yung nagiging anchor natin. Since we are talking about the European Union, let's have the economic and political integration of European Union or the European integration. When we say European integration, it is the process of industrial, legal, political, economic, social, and cultural integration of states wholly or partially in Europe. European integration has primarily come about through the European Union and its policies, meaning yung mga member nations ng European Union ang involved dito sa European integration. European Union is an international organization comprising 28 European countries and governing common economic, social, and security policies. In the early century, EU expanded into Central and Eastern Europe with the following members: Austria, Belgium, Bulgaria, Croatia, Cyprus, Czech Republic, Denmark, Estonia, Finland, France, Germany, Greece, Hungary, Ireland, Italy, Latvia, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Malta, the Netherlands, Poland, Portugal, Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia, Spain, Sweden, and the United Kingdom. Due to the membership of those nations, mas naging malawak na ngayon yung European Union. Thus, they can also propagate yung kanilang economic integration, which can be described now as a process and means by which a group of countries strives to increase their level of welfare. It is said to be an arrangement between different regions that often includes the reduction or elimination of trade barriers and the coordination of monetary and fiscal policies. So dito ngayon, pag-uusapan natin ang 7 stages of economic integration, which includes the preferential trading area and the free trade area as first. So dito ngayon, pag-uusapan natin ang 7 stages of economic integration, which includes the preferential trading area and the free trade area as first two. PTA and or the preferential trading area together with the free trade area. It happens when there's an agreement on reducing or eliminating tariff or the tax or duty to be paid on a particular class or of imports or exports. It is imposed on selected goods imported from other member of countries. There will be an agreement, whether that is bilateral or multilateral. Bilateral kapag between two countries lang. Multilateral naman between several countries. So free trade areas are created when two or more countries in a region agree to reduce or eliminate barriers to trade on all goods coming from other members. Just like the North Atlantic Free Trade Agreement or the NAFTA. It is an example of free trade area which includes the USA, Canada, and Mexico. In NAFTA, if in case you're not familiar with it, it is a pact between the Canada, United States of America, and Mexico. So originally, yung NAFTA ay composed pa lang ni Canada and USA in 1989. Tapos, by January 1, 1994, nag-join si Mexico. At dun nga nabuo ang tinatawag na ngayon na NAFTA. It helps in developing and expanding world trade by broadening international cooperation. It also aims to increase cooperation for improving work conditions in North America by reducing barriers to trade as it extends the market to the three countries, Mexico, United States, and Canada. It caused manufacturing jobs from developed nations, Canada and USA, to be transferred to less developed nations, which is Mexico. Why? Para ma-reduce yung cost ng products nila. With the existence of NAFTA, nagkaroon ito ng positive and negative effects para dun sa United States, Mexico, and Canada. Una, it lowered prices by removing tariffs. Hindi po ba na kapag merong high integration, merong low tariff or meron tayong low cost for taxes, meron tayong low cost for production. Kaya magkakaroon similar prices para dun sa mga products. Dahil sa NAFTA, nangyari yung pagbaba ng prices dahil merong high integration. And dahil doon, nagkaroon ng more opportunities para sa small and medium-sized businesses to establish their own name dahil they do have access to different commodities na merong similar price dun sa original na country. At dahil doon, nagkaroon ng increase or nag-quadruple yung trade between the three countries. Mas tumaas yung kanilang import and exchange rate. And it created 5 million US jobs. Sa negative effects naman, nagkaroon ng excessive pollution. Bakit po ba nagkaroon ng excessive pollution? Paano ba magkakaroon ng mass production? Kinakailangan magtayo ng factories. Out of these factories, syempre magkakaroon sila ng machineries. Yung mga machines na to ay may possibility mag-produce ng pollution. Then, nagkaroon ng loss of more than 682,000 manufacturing jobs. Ma'am, bakit pa nagkaroon pa ng loss of more than 682 manufacturing jobs? Kung nagtayo naman sila ng mga factories. Hindi po ba kapag kami bagong factory, kinakailangan nila ng workers? That is, kung hindi mas madami ang i-operate na machine. Dahil sa existence ng machines, therefore, mas kokonti na yung tao na kinakailangan nila. Dahil po pwede namang gawin ng machines yung gagawin ng mga tao. Kung sino lang mag-ooperate ng machines, yun lang ang kinakailangan nila. So they caused the loss of more than 682,000 manufacturing jobs. At dahil mas mura ang production and labor rate sa Mexico, doon nila dinala ang production. And it caused the exploitation of workers in Mexico. Bakit po nagkaroon exploitation of workers in Mexico? Sila ang nagtatrabaho, sila ang gumagawa ng production, pero hindi sila nababayaran same rate ng trabaho na ginagawa ng taga-US at Canada. Kasi sa US at Canada, mas mataas ang pasahod. Yun yung tinatawag na they created 5 million US jobs. Galing sa US, yung trabaho, pero dinala nila papunta sa Mexico para dun sila magbabayad at a lower rate. Ang fourth na negative effect natin ay yung moving Mexican farmers out of business. So, saan ba itatayo itong mga factories na ito? Kung wala na silang land na makita dun sa mga farming lands. Therefore, kinakailangan nilang bilhin yon. Then, customs union naman has something to do with a nation or a member country having an agreement with the member countries to reduce the tariff or the trade barriers. Tapos, para naman dun sa mga non-member countries ay mas mataas or meron tayong different rates for member countries and non-member countries na nangyayari for customs union. Then, yung tariff revenue na makukuha out of the trading will be shared by the member nations. Tapos meron pa din namang mariretain para dun sa country na nag-collect nung tariff. For next naman ay common market. Sa common market, this is said to be one major step towards economic integration. In here, all barriers to mobility of people, capital, and other resources within the area in question, as well as eliminating non-tariff barriers to trade, such as the regulatory treatment of products. To sum it up, economic integration or regional integration is an agreement among nations to reduce or eliminate trade barriers and agree on fiscal policies. The European Union, for example, represents complete economic integration. However, as mentioned earlier, hindi perfect yung economic integration nila. The strict nationalism oppose economic integration due to concerns over a loss of sovereignty. Political integration here refers to the integration of components within political systems, the integration of political systems with economic, social, and other human systems, and the political process in which social, economic, and political systems become integrated, creating common policy framework that creates equal conditions for the functions of the integrated parts of the economy is the aim of policy integration. Political integration is mainly based on welfare increasing effects of integrated policymaking according to the economics of European integration. It brings economic benefits by leading to a recovery of effectiveness in policy making. With that, we have different theories when it comes to the European integration or the neo-functionalism. In neo-functionalism, it is revolving around the spillover concept. When we say spillover concept, it means that when something happens in the economy of a certain country, it will affect the economy of another country, whether that is related or not. So, in addition, spillover effects refers to the effect on the economy of a country from unrelated events happening in another country. Events including natural calamities such as earthquakes or political crisis in another country that can have positive or negative effects on the economy of a country as well as other country. It is related to globalization, international trade, and interconnected financial markets between different economies of the world. Example ng spillover effect ay yung US-China trade war. Si US nag-impose ng heavy tariff sa Chinese goods na pumapasok sa US since early 2018. Gumanti si China by imposing tariffs naman dun sa mga US-made products na pumapasok sa China. And it resulted to the trade war between the two largest economies of the world. Yung US-China trade war na yun ay nagkaroon ng spillover effect, both negative and positive, on various economies of the world. The trade war in its third year has harmed the economies of both US and China while creating uncertainty for global trade and slowing global economic growth. The trade war is an example of a significant event between two countries affecting various countries and global trade. Kasi it slows down the Chinese economy and it has a negative impact on the global trade in energy, in crude oil, metals, and other industrial commodities. Intergovernmentalism. European integration is driven by the interests and actions of nation states. Emphasis in the role of nation states in the European integration. And this theory was suggested by Stanley Hoffmann, where it proposed the logic of diversity, which set limits to the degree which spillover process can limit the freedom of action of the governments. And the logic of diversity implies that on vital issues, losses are not compensated by gains on other issues. Meaning, hindi porket nakinabang ang isang country sa spillover effect, makikinabang na din yung iba pang country or makikinabang lahat over sa spillover effects. And yung vital issues na sinasabi dito, pwede itong in terms of poverty, pwede itong in terms of education, o kaya health. So, they say na hindi natin mako-cover up yung pagkukulang sa health, sa poverty, sa sanitation, or sa education through depending only to the spillover effect. Kasi nga po, may negative effect pa din naman yung spillover concept. Tapos, liberal intergovernmentalism naman, in here, state society have a fundamental impact on state behavior in world politics and that the universal condition of world politics is globalization. They believe na merong web of globalized economic, social, and political relationships that determine the living conditions of individual citizens, corporations, and civic groups and shapes what they want and thus what their government want. Liberal intergovernmentalists state that the bargaining power of member states is important in the pursuit of integration. The package deals and side payments also occur in the process of making deals. It has something to do with political aspect or the global governance na tinatawag natin. So global governance, it encompasses or it includes the norms, rules, and principles na nagdodominate sa mga member countries. This global governance is a product of neoliberal paradigm which shifts in international political and economic relations. It is a movement towards political integration of transnational actors, which aimed at negotiating responses to problems that affect more than one state or region. Then we have new institutionalism. In new institutionalism, it emphasizes the importance of institutions in the process of European integration. So we can say na yung kanyang key strands ay rational choice, sociological, and historical aspects. Ito yung tinuturing natin na institutions para sa process of integration. Without this rational choice, the historical and sociological, therefore, will be having a hard time when it comes to determining the economic progress as well as stabilizing the economy of a certain country. Then multi-level governance or the MLG. Writers Lisbeth Hook and Gary Marx defined multi-level governance as dispersion of authority across multiple levels of political governance. So they stated that over the last 50 years, authority and sovereignty has moved away from national governments in Europe. So not just to the supranational level, to the EU, but also to subnational levels, such as regional assemblies and local authorities. Kung sa Pilipinas, meron tayong president, vice president, senators, hanggang sa barangay captain at mga konsihal niya. And it's said that this also affects the integration. Kasi kung magkakaiba sila ng gusto, therefore magkakaiba din yung maipopropose nila na policies, na fiscal policies, which will affect the economic sovereignty and integrity of one country. So let's now talk about transnational activism in states. When we say transnational activism, it can be defined as the mobilization of collective claims by actors located in more than one country and or addressing more than one national government and or international governmental organization or another international actor. So dito sa transnational activism, merong mga member nations or merong mga individuals na merong collective claims, meron silang unified goal regarding certain issues, regarding certain economic issues. And then they are moving to address that issue in the national government or international governmental organization. Next ay social movement. So si social movement naman ay localized transnational activism. Si social movement is a group action. It refers to organizational structures and strategies that may empower oppressed populations to mount effective challenges and resist the more powerful and advantaged elites. Kung si transnational, kinakailangan niyang meron pang members from other location or other country. Si social movement naman ay localized. Meaning kahit in one location lang siya or sa isang region lang siya maganap, we can consider that as social movement. And take note na hindi porket tinawag siyang social movement ay ito ay palaging movement ng isang oppressed versus the advantage. Matatawag din natin na social movement kapag yung two parties ay merong contradicting views. For example, death penalty, merong pro death penalty at meron ding against death penalty. So once they gather and made a move para sa pinaglalaban nila, we can consider that as social movement. Next ay global justice movement. It is described as the loose collection of individuals and groups often referred to as movement of movements who advocate fair trade rules and are negative to current institutions of global economics such as the World Trade Organization. It is often labeled as the anti-globalization movement by the mainstream media. Those involved frequently deny that they are anti-globalization. They insist that they support globalization of communication and people. But they oppose the global expansion of corporate power. So they are anti-capitalist. And universalist perspective on globalization is indicated in the term of differentiating the movement from those whose politics are based on the defense of conservative on national sovereignty as the identified opponents of globalization. New transnational activism, which is a multifaceted as the internationalism. Although globalization and global neoliberalism are frames around which many activists mobilize, The protests and organizations are not the product of a global imaginary, but a domestically rooted activists who are the connective tissue of the global and local, working as activators, brokers, and advocates for claims both domestic and international. So itong mga new transnational activism na to came from the past advocacies. Out of these past advocacies, they were able to bring out once again new aspect or new light to that advocacy. Then they are working as activators, whether that is domestic or in international level. Dito ngayon papasok yung functioning social media sa state. So social media is a computer-based technology that facilitates the sharing of ideas and information and the building of virtual networks and communities. And through that, magkakaroon ngayon sila ng new transnational activism. Kasi through social media, they will be able to reach greater number of people. And we know that through social media, users engage with it through computer, tablet, smartphone by a web-based software or web application, which is often utilized for messaging, and it empowers individuals to have a voice. Kaya many social movements nowadays are increasingly seen in the social media platform. Kasi yun yung means nila to collaboratively force out yung kanilang diverse stakeholders. With regards to state naman, social media help the state para ma-propagate kung ano yung information or para mapalawak pa yung information dissemination. And at the same time, this social media are used commercially as a key mode for product exposure and messaging. So landscape of organizational communication within social movements is shaped and often fundamentally influenced by social media. So right-wing effects which touch many different aspects of the movements process from resource mobilization to actual interventions. Social movements can and do draw from accumulated knowledge gleaned from previous movements and activities. And social media have changed the ways in which knowledge is being recorded and passed on. New forms of digital media are accompanied by globalization and bringing light to the possibilities of merging new kinds of communities via networks and creating new arenas for political interaction, identity, and belonging, which is evident even in the Philippines. So the concept of network society affirms that citizens and civil society organizations can increasingly use networks to gain power relative states by generating alternative discourses that have the potential to overwhelm the disciplinary discursive capacity of the state as a necessary step to neutralizing the use of violence. However, meron pa rin naman tayong tinatawag na online violence or yung internet violence in form of bullying or cyberbullying. So it's believed that states are making pragmatic transformation by adopting to fit in among decisive global networks in finance, education, science, technology, arts, culture, and sports. And new media opens up potential for citizens to gain leverage. It is the only power of global civil society acting on the public mind via media and communication networks. And eventually, it will overcome the historical inertia of nation states.